So welcome everybody to the March 2023 Web Dev Big. What do we want to talk about today, guys? Did anybody bring topics, bugs, etc.? No? Okay. I have something if no one else wants to talk. Let me share my screen. So I've got my ducks in a row here. So I make sure I have the right window open. So I have this bug that comes up every month or two. I get calls and complaints about it. And I commented on it. It's been around since 2020. I commented on it in 2022. Looks like it's kind of hung up. And so when that happens, I decide to make Band-Aids. So the problem is that in previous versions of Koha, like 1811, when you went to a patron's checkout screen and there's a hold on the book, it would have the on hold message like it does here. Now, in the current versions, instead of that, it's giving this not renewable message precedence. So you can't tell that there's a hold on it. So if I go to override that renewal, which happens more than it probably should, it gives me the checkbox instead of telling me that it's on hold. And then when I try to renew it, there was a very, very quick message that you couldn't see because I scrolled down that said renew failed. And it's popped back up to not renewable. So that's created lots of frustration for my search staff at different libraries, because either they think they've renewed it and then they go back later and see that it hasn't renewed, or they just haven't renewed it. You can see on the record that there is indeed a hold, which is why it got blocked. So the Band-Aid I created was adding that on hold message back here by leveraging the bib number and the hold API, or this list holds endpoint. So code is stable. Let me comment it. Uncommon. Yeah, take the comment out and save again. So now when I refresh the page, it's really slow on my test server for some reason. And it should pop up here in a second. It works fine on my production server. I think it's just the test server takes longer to fire. So now you can see this is how I tell that the code fired, because that's in the same little block. But you can also see that the on hold link is now present, in addition to the not renewable, because why not have both there, right? So now staff can easily see, oh, I could try and override that, but it's not going to work. So the way I did that was by first, I'm limiting it to the circ page, looking at that table, picking out each row. And then this was the worst part of it, was getting the bib number, because there's not an easy way to grab the bib number from each row. So I ended up going into the URL here and grabbing it off the end of there. So that's what this chunk is doing right here. It's looking for the span that has title as the ID, and then it's looking for the child of that and grabbing the link. I added in a, if you can't find it, put no, because I was getting errors if there wasn't anything there. I needed something, and I'm not sure why there wouldn't be anything there, but it's been a couple of weeks since I wrote this code, but I know that was important. And then from there, I'm taking that chunk that I fold and I'm splitting it at the phrase bib number equals and grabbing the chunk after it, which gives me the bib number in this variable. And then this is just so that I can actually call the API. So I went over here, found that this is what I needed. I am working within the staff client, so that's the right slug. And then I played around with it and found that I needed to do like little, and I think I used some of Lucas's code on querying the biblio endpoint to figure out how to do this. But basically, it needs a question mark, and then you tell it what you're passing it, tossing over to it, and then that's my variable here. So that's my bib number. So the easy way to check if that worked is if you actually go to the URL that it's generating, you can see that the data is getting pulled. You can see what information you can leverage. For me, that was going to be suspended, and hold date and status are the things that I looked at. So I did try to build in some things. So going back to kind of walking through it. So if there isn't a bib number, oh, I remember now. So I had to put that in there because it's going through each row, and these rows up here don't have a bib number, so that it was like breaking my code. So I put in that or no so that I could exclude this top row. So that's what this is doing here. It's saying if there's if the bib number isn't no, then we're gonna actually call that list holds. We're gonna get some information from it. I did have to change caching to true, otherwise it like didn't work right, and that's probably just my own ignorance. It was appending a timestamp after this, but it wasn't formed in a way that worked correctly. So I set it to true, so the caching is probably not working exactly like it should. And then if it works, then we're kind of iterating through each one. I want to check and see if it's suspended. If it's not suspended, then the message appears here. If it is suspended, then I know that the thing actually can renew because the hold isn't blocking that. So I wanted to account for that. The hold date, if it's a future date hold, again, it's not going to block the renewal, so I need to exclude that. So that's what that chunk does. And then the status. So like if it's in transit, if it's waiting, then that's not going to prevent the renewal. So I needed to exclude that as well. So it's just kind of stepping through those different logics to determine if that the hold is actually going to block the renewal or not. After it's checked all those things, then I'm going into the row, each row, and looking for this, which has its own class. So that's what I'm leveraging there. Finding that, and then it's appending or prepending to the parent element of that, the on hold link, and that's building out with, again, this bib number that I pulled up there, so that when you click on it, it takes you to the record, the placehold screen as expected, just like the ones that work too. Other than that, it's the only thing that doesn't work well is it's in this table that loads after the page loads, and you saw that when I reloaded the page, it took a while. I'm firing it in like a document1 ajax stop call instead of a document ready. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I can only call it once, otherwise it just puts it on. It like loops through and duplicates over and over again. So what that means is if I do renew something, the table will reload without the page reloading, and then the message goes away and it doesn't get a chance to reload again. So that's kind of the last thing that I haven't figured out how to make work, but that's the gist of what I did.
Does that also work in conjunction with like some other jQuery to load that table immediately? Doesn't that table usually not load unless you click load this table?
Oh, right. So there's a checkbox down at the bottom that says always show immediately.
Oh, and that fires your Ajax function probably, right? Okay.
Yeah. So that was my recent fun Band-Aid thing that I worked on to make people happy. And it works for the most part. I mean, it's while we wait for the actual fix to come through, I think it's a workable workaround.
You might also like this function for data tables. It's an empty function, and that's not the right ID, but
Right.
the init.dt is a special data tables thing. That's like when data tables initializes.
Okay. I'll play around with that.
And then also this one can be helpful in different circumstances, which is like when the data table draws.
Yeah, I've got some.
It will catch you in loops a lot of times because if you try to do something and redraw the table, it's going to run it again and again. But they're helpful sometimes.
Awesome. I'll play with those. I see that George talked about chewing while I was talking. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about there?
I was just going to say, I sent Luke a question yesterday asking about if there was a way to do the borrower attribute in the template toolkit on the notices. You can, in the double angle brackets, you can do borrower attribute. Like we have a borrower attribute called hold. What's their preferred contact method, which now is built into Koha. But we have lots of legacy data, you know, what's the preferred contact method, and it's this borrower attribute. And I asked if there was a way to turn that into a template toolkit function, and there isn't. And there's actually a bug for that. Lucas said we should file a bug about that, and then I went and looked, and there already is one.
That would be helpful to have, because it's okay to have it in the hungry alligator syntax, but if you want to do logic on it, not just display it, it's best in template.
Yeah, and that's what I really wanted, is I wanted to do logic on it. There's the bug. And I noticed, I don't know if it was after I sent you the link, but I noticed that you're a CC on that bug, Luke.
Yeah, I said that it came in my email. I was like, I must have known about this bug at some point because I'm CC'd on it.
So yeah, it's an idea that's been around, but what my workaround is I can share what I was working on this morning, and I think it works right, and it was a kind of a pain in the ass. I just need to figure out which screen I've got that on. So it's screen 3, okay. So this is the slip that I was using. And what I figured out is that if you use the string, if you add use string in the template toolkit commands, what I ended up doing is it's down here somewhere. So I created a contact method equals string new, and I plugged that borrower attribute in the double angle brackets in there, so that it's getting that, it's converting that string, it's converting that into a string. And then my difficulty was, what I figured out is if there's something there, if there's an attribute there, it converts that into it turns that into a string that I can pull up with template toolkit. And then I can look at the length of that. And so if it has a certain length, I was figuring, you know, if there's no attribute, then it's going to be 0. And so I could say, if the contact method length is not 0, put the value there. What I figured out, though, is that if there isn't a value there, it reads that borrower attribute in the double angle brackets. It converts that into the string. So the string becomes borrower attribute with double angle brackets around it. So I had to figure out what's the length of that, which is 27. And none of my variables, none of the attributes are 27 characters. So if it's not 27 characters long, then it puts that in there. So it was a workaround. It was a weird workaround, but it works, which I'm happy
better
with.
to just say if it equals the borrower attribute?
Yeah, but there's like 7 attributes. So I would have to have 7. I would have to go through that and say, you know, if contact method equals this, or if contact method equals that.
It begins with.
They all begin with every single one of them begins with a different letter. So there was no commonality that I could latch onto. But the length works. Yeah, because the longest one is like 9 characters long. So if it's 27, I could have said if it's greater than 9, that would have worked too. But saying, you know, just if it's not 27, that it works. So it's a good workaround for until everybody comments on bug 30657 and we get added to Koha. So that was one thing I worked on. The other thing, and Christopher and I actually did a video on this that'll be out in a couple of weeks. So after, I used to have, on our circulation page, we have this library contact list. It's just data from Koha so that people can go and find, instead of having to, we used to have people go to a separate site to get, you know, if you wanted to call the library and burn, there's no easy way for a library that isn't a system, for a librarian that isn't a system administrator to get that out of Koha. So I had a report that generated this table. But after the MariaDB upgrade, that table broke. And so I used the API to recreate this. So instead of running a report when this table loads, it's getting all the data from the API, which was a lot of stuff. It was a big piece of stuff to write. And I haven't put it up on the wiki yet. But let me see if I can, you know, I've got too much custom code. I've got 2,700 lines of custom code in my Koha. But this section, share it over here. So this section, the first thing I had to do was, you know, I wanted to make sure that I was on that page, so that it's only on that page. And then I'm getting from JSON, the API, it's just libraries get you all of the library information. And then I just had to chop it up. You know, I'm getting the address and all of these things, I'm putting them into variables, and then I'm just building a table, and then the jQuery is sticking the table on there on that system preference for, I think it's intranet circ HTML. I've got the table built there. I've just got the header row, and then I'm taking all of this data that the API gets and appending it to that header row. And then I went as far as I also went in and added an old piece of jQuery that Christopher wrote like back in 2012. So that if you go to that So I even made it better than it used to be. So at the top of the table, I put a search box so that you can, so instead of having to scroll all the way to the bottom, you can just do a search there. And it was a nice way of dealing with the fact that the MariaDB upgrade broke one of my reports. And that was a long discussion with Liz about why it broke and different ways that we might be able to make it better. So I don't know how many other reports it broke. It broke Christopher's holds counter on his homepage.
I haven't found any broken ones yet, but I did break my hold counter because I was trying to accommodate for fishes and sharks yesterday. But I think I figured that out.
What I got the email from Liz somewhere explaining, the person at Rackspace explained why it broke, and has to do with there were issues with some of the fields and some of the tables in Koha, the way they're indexed, or in some cases not indexed. So that's kind of all I got.
Anybody else? Fun, cool stuff you're doing? Oh, I didn't put my bug in the chat. I should do that for the recording. I'll find it.
If you put it in there, I'll add it to the koha-US Bugzilla group.
Oh, I did work on my little hold stuff a little more because I kept running into issues. So Christopher and I talked about, so I was using the hold state, but then when things became suspended and then unsuspended, it was saying it was an old hold even though it wasn't. So I adjusted my report to use the timestamp, because whenever you unsuspend a hold, it uses the timestamp. But then I found that if you place a future date hold, it's got a timestamp from way back when, but a hold data right now. So it's saying that it's a really old hold, even though it just became active today. So I did write some additions to my SQL on that so that it's trying to accommodate for both situations and
Are you
taking
using some logic to find the newer date?
correct, yeah. I'll find the report.
Yeah, if you could share that, that would be great. I can.
I have too many reports and it takes forever to load.
I've got the exact same problem.
I just keep adding more. It's terrible. Somebody needs to take away my permissions.
I'm not sure, but I think I can log into your system and do that if you really want me to.
No, that would probably be disastrous. I was
Just give
like,
you checkout only permission.
can't even log into the staff client. Just take it all away. How do I do that? So it's not this report. It must be. And I have some of them labeled as like auxiliary, so that I know that there's jQuery associated with it, and sometimes it's not. It must be this holds timestamp. Yes. Okay. So share my screen. So this is what I ended up doing to get what I just talked about. So if the reserve date is bigger than the timestamp, then I use the reserve date. Otherwise, I'm using the timestamp. It was fairly simple, and I don't know if it's actually worked or not, but I think it does what I needed to do. So I'll put that in the chat. Just simple case when, and then none of that changed. So it's a really simple report that's running it, and it's what that one does is puts little placards here. So if I go to somebody that I might have placards, it's this. So it's actually the jQuery is putting that date there and then running the, also taking it into account for this. And then I did pull up that other report. Ooh. So this is the one that was adding logic for the sharks and the fishes. Because on this page, I hide, like on the hold queue, I hide them if they don't share their new items. But back on the little number counter thing, it was still including them because I didn't account for it in the report. So now I'm going through, and this stuff's actually like debugging. It's just this one where I'm doing some math and saying like, if it's the branch that's running it and it's new, then it's a 1, you add 1. If it's not new, then you're adding that in. So that's like everything else. And then I'm subtracting out any of the new holds from the libraries that don't share their new stuff that are new and making that the total. So I think that works. It's convoluted. That was exciting.
I was rather annoyed, well, annoyed, but understandable at the request. But after I implemented the hold counter with the glowing, I had requests to remove the glowing because of some people with photosensitivity and strobing, and it's like, okay, so I just removed the pulsing look. It still has the color and striping and everything, but it was kind of,
I understand though.
I did slow it down, but that wasn't sufficient for them. So
yeah, you could also make it like glow without the blink, probably just have like a shadow behind it that's red. But yeah, no, my librarians take it like really seriously now. Like they get really offended too when it starts doing stuff. Like when the hold popped up for this one library that said it was back from February, but it really wasn't. They were like, I pull my holds every day, and all like they get really upset about it. But it has solved most of my problems. I don't have anybody with month-old, year-old holds anymore because it's really popping out at them now. So
well, thanks
I'm
for
satisfied
sharing the
with that.
logic. I'm going to throw that in my code soon.
Sure.
Does anybody foresee any major issues when the new interface comes out in the next version? Particularly with with any modifications. I imagine it's going to be a fun journey when that comes out.
I imagine there's going to be some jQuery that breaks, some CSS that breaks.
Do you know how soon our test servers will be updated with the new version?
I can't tell you. I don't know any of that information off the top of my head. I could ask the systems folks, but I don't know.
I might put in a support ticket and say, hey, let's get this as soon as possible, because we're probably going to have some work, quite a bit of work to do on that one.
I put in a ticket for that, I think in February. Let me double check and see what they said on that.
But also, you know, like the search bar up top changes some. Most of the templates are completely unchanged, so there may be less than you think, hopefully.
When they do these new looks, it would sure be nice if they gave you the option, I want the old look, I want the new look, or whatever. You know, if they're not changing anything fundamental, it would be nice, because
We heard that request some as they were doing it, and The only problem there is then you're making developers maintain sort of like two versions of a template or two versions of JS. So they didn't want to go down that road.
Well, the way you said it there, Christopher, you made it sound like it happens all the time. This is only the second major upgrade to the way Koha looks since I've been using it for
the
10
staff
years
client,
now.
right? I
For
think
the
there's
for the
only
staff
been-
client.
I think
I'm just thinking down the road, it would be nice, you know, if it had some, you know, it had the ability to do different skins to it, so that if you wanted a specific look and didn't want developers constantly changing, or not constantly, but changing the look on you, that, you know, if they want a different look, they just include a new skin.
Yeah, themes would be nice.
Dark mode at the very least.
Yeah, so would light mode, dark mode.
The ticket about the upgraded 2211 for test servers, Liz said that probably in April or May they'll have the the Bywater build available, finished, and then so about April or May would be a time when they could start upgrading test servers. She said to just put in a ticket around that time.
Thanks.
What I heard there is we all need to put in a ticket tomorrow saying we want to be upgraded. Then Michael said it was time to upgrade.
I don't know
Sure.
that I want to borrow that trouble this soon, honestly.
I did show the upgraded version of the staff client to a couple of my we've got a small group of we call them the trailblazers. They kind of get early access to stuff like this, and their biggest concern was that some of the text with the green and white is a bit harder to read if it's the same size as what it is now, especially the different tabs at the top, the checkout, renew, and search and stuff like that. With the white on green, I think is what it is it's not quite as easy to read as it is now, even though it's the same size, it looks like.
That was my big concern when this was first rolled out, is it was even smaller. And some of the search bar, the main search bar that appears on a lot of pages, there was no text at all. It was all icons. And it was really tiny. And that was my big complaint, was that I've got people that, you know, already have their screens set to like, you know, 600 by 800, and they still have trouble reading it. And so they actually made some changes based on that feedback.
Yeah, that no text and icons only was a early iteration.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and that was a big complaint about it.
Yeah,
it was just too small. And yeah,
That should have at least been a preference.
Another theme to add: large print. That's our plan, I think. Here is where I'm gonna like show it off a little bit at our next users group, and then we're gonna try and get a small group of testers together, just to work on it in the test server and make those sort of little CSS tweaks and things before it hits everybody.
And there's not really a good way to artificially bump up the text size for a local install, is there? As far as just making things a bit bigger for a certain.
I don't see why you couldn't just set your font size to 120 on the body to 120% or whatever suits you.
yeah, I was looking at that at writing some jQuery that would say take whatever the font size is and increase it by 20%. I did a little bit of that on the Bywater. Bywater's test server, their demo site is already set up for this, so it's already set on the new look. And so I was just playing around there. The great thing about that is, you know, I've been told a couple of times, go ahead and try and break it, because it resets every 6 hours or every 12 hours. So I did that early on. I shut the whole thing down for like for 6 hours, and nobody could use it. It was kind of fun.
Good job.
Yeah, I took my code and put it in a sandbox because I wanted to see, you know, how much will translate over, and, you know, will it look good, and do I need it, and all that. And that's been a long time ago, so I'd probably do it again just to kind of see what kind of modifications, and especially the font size.
Yeah, the sandbox is a really good place to preview the new interface. I forget about that, but yeah, that's the next go-to outside of the test server. You know, test server is great for, you know, the stuff that you have set up on a regular basis, and you don't want to have to go and throw everything together. But the sandbox is really good for looking at that interface. We need an option, you know, we could do away with our test server if they added an option on the sandbox to dump all of our stuff into a sandbox.
Sounds like a privacy nightmare.
Well, I mean, short of, I maybe not patrons and items, because I mean, yeah, it would be a storage issue, but for sure it, but especially a privacy issue, but at least all your settings, and it would be nice if you could copy your admin preferences and just everything else over. That would be a cool feature.
I have a bug I'm going to put in the chat, and it has to do with the display of suspended holds. And we ran into this recently. There's all those Colleen Hoover books that everybody is reading right now. And so I think they were at the information desk, and a woman came up and she had one of them. And so she's like, can I really check this out? Because everybody kind of knows it's a long holds queue to get to these things. And the people at the desk were like, well, those are all on hold. Why is that out on the shelf? It shouldn't be. And so when they looked at it, they're looking on the request page, and it shows there's like 4 holds waiting. So why is this out on the shelf? And they came and got me, and they're like, something's wrong. And then when we dug into it, it's like, well, but all those people that are in the queue happen to have their holds suspended. And it's just not real obvious. There is there's the box there about, it says like suspended, and there's a date box, but at first glance, it doesn't catch you, that those holds are actually suspended. And if there was some way to, I don't know, highlight it or different color, or say suspended more, just something that's more in your face. And there happened to be another patron out there who was like, well, I'm on hold for that. And so she was like, well, why am I not getting it? But she was one of the ones that had suspended her hold, and she had forgotten she suspended it.
I'm going to turn it blue and use this emoji. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Here we go. Yes, frozen hold.
Ah, very nice.
No, I will echo the sentiment that this is a thing that comes up quite, it came up a lot more when suspensions were first around, because people didn't realize things were suspended, because it's like reverse of what you would expect logically. Like you push the suspend button to suspend it, and then it changes to don't suspend. And they added the little like play pause symbols at some point to make that a little clearer, but it really, it still catches new staff off guard sometimes. So I think this would be a good improvement.
Well, and I put a link in there to the video that Christopher and I did. Season 1, episode 14 of the Every Other Thursday videos. So that's what that YouTube link is in there, Barbara.
So I have this. I added ribbons to ours to make those stand out.
Yep, that's what you do in the video.
Yeah. So that's helpful. And if it was suspended, let's see here, if I unsuspend it, that goes away. If I suspend it, or if I do it for a future date. Well, no, I have one somewhere. I can't remember where I put that. Maybe it's not on my test. Oh, there it is. Oh, that needs to be fixed. But it says it's not needed until after a certain date. I'll have to fix that. Formatting is always an issue. But it's been helpful.
I will go back and review. I think that'll help us. I think a lot of our staff sort of forget about the fact that patrons can suspend their holds. And so they're just not thinking that that could even be the case.
Now, it would be nice if that was just built into Koha and we didn't need extra code to do it. If there was just a way that those were obvious.
Yeah.
All right. Any other cool things people have been doing, bugs they want to talk about, issues you're having, pain points you want to put band-aids on?
When you were talking about the holds issue early on, and I was still eating my sandwich, I've encountered an issue with this most recent upgrade where there's no warning about item level requests. When you go to try to renew something that has an item level request, there's nothing, and there's nothing that blocks it. So I don't remember if I opened a ticket with Bywater or not about that yet, but it's probably, if I didn't, it's on my to-do list. But that's what I encountered after the upgrade, is that if the request, if you try to renew an item that has a request on it, and request is the item level request, there's nothing that stops it at all. At least on our system.
That's not good.
I so much discourage item level requests. So it's not a huge big deal here, because everybody is supposed to be placing title level requests.
You
And
must not mix formats and records.
we try not to, no.
Yeah, that's
and you
impossible
guys
to get
do,
away.
yeah.
That's impossible to get away with if we mix formats, because we have our large print on the same record as our regular print, and people do need to be able to request specific versions for items.
Yeah, we have different records for large print and regular print. So
I think the bug that I put in chat fixes what you're talking about, because I ran into this too. One of my librarians was like, I think I have God level powers now because I can renew things that are on hold. I'm like,
yeah,
no, it's just a bug. You're getting those taken away soon.
For us, the issue, the library that called me about this issue, the things that were checked out that had item level requests on it were ILLs. So it was checked out to a library like in Dodge City. And I said, well, this isn't really a big deal, because the Dodge City library doesn't log into their Next Search catalog account and renew these items. It's only staff. So that shouldn't be an issue for most of our item level requests.
I wish Koha had the ability to do what you right now you have to pay to have I always forget the name of the other product, what's the other thing that by
You're
water?
thinking about Aspen and verbalization.
Aspen, yeah. I wish it had the ability to do what Aspen does, and that's, you know, group all the different formats together into a single result. That is nice, but you know, unfortunately, that's an add-on.
It's been discussed. It gets hung up every time I think we talk about it.
Because it's out there and it's another a whole nother product. But you know, really, you know, delivering that aspect, you know, forget the whole formatting, you know, the look and feel of everything that Aspen brings, you know, that is a basic functionality that seems like it would be reasonable for it to be built into Koha OPAC.
It is on the Bywater developments page near the top. I don't,
Oh, is it?
yeah, I don't remember the direct link to get there, but
I think it's been there for a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I don't know. We talked about it at conference, and then we had a little bit of discussion at a cataloging SIG. Joy came, but then Heather wasn't there that day. And we really need Heather involved, I think, because she's our expert on how the linking fields work. But I think there's a way we could make Koha do it. It already has those linking fields in the mark structure. The problem is, like, how do you group the titles together? Like, how do you say that all of those hook fins should be grouped together? You need like the work above the records to tie everything together. And where does that information come from? Is there an external database that we can use to do those groupings for us? That sort of thing is where I think we got bogged down at. But I would love to see it happen.
I just realized that's the OPAC. Never mind.
Yeah, I keep running into these things, like big things I wish Koha could do. I wish we had just like a ton of money we could throw at this. We could throw at like push notifications. I really want that. There was something else that came up the other day. Like, I wish that we didn't have to use third-party products for RFID, because my libraries are never going to be able to afford third-party products for RFID. There's just like some really big stuff I would love to see happen someday. But I don't know how to make it happen. That's the problem.
At least get the discussion rolling on it.
Yeah, try to keep those things alive.
Yeah, that's the big thing, you know, just be the squeaky wheel.
All right, well, anybody watching this recording will know that's my wish list right now, top 3. Is there anything else people want to talk about today? If not, we can wrap it up for this month, and we'll meet again next month. Same time, same channel. I never got that cricket button. And I'm gonna, maybe I can teach my barcode scanner to make cricket noises, and then I can just like scan some barcodes off to the side where no one can see and have crickets chirping. Yeah, no. That sounds like a good waste of time for me.
I would like at some point, and maybe this needs to be another bug that's opened up. I would like all the stuff on the homepage that's down at the bottom that's supposed to alert you. I would like that moved over with the news over on the left-hand side. I never understood why all that stuff was thrown at the bottom. It doesn't make any sense, especially if it can scroll off the screen. Those alerts and notifications should be something that's a priority on the left-hand side. That's my opinion.
Sounds like a logical bug to file to me.
I still have to work on, we did a video a while back on adding the upcoming closures on the homepage, and I have to work on making modification because right now we don't have any upcoming closures and it just shows an empty table. So I gotta put some logic in there to hide that when it's empty.
I do that with my club holds, but I can't tell you how I did it. Like it'll replace the thing with a message that says no new club holds at this time. But I'd have to dig through and figure out because that's been a while.
There's also the issue, if I go to certain libraries that are regularly closed on certain days, it shows those regular closures, and I'm wondering, George, do you have any kind of logic in your code to exclude regular closures, like, if you're not on open certain days of the week?
I think that speaks for itself. Repeats every week, repeats every week. I just wrote it that way so that, that those every Saturday, every Sunday closures are there. But there is a note there that says they repeat regularly. So, and I kind of want those there. My goal with putting that table was so that, the library directors would look at it and remember that, my plan is to put that on as the main thing that they see when on the homepage in like November, so that they remember to either add their closures for next year to the calendar for their library, or to contact me with a list of dates saying these are the dates we're going to be closed, because I'm happy to do that for them. But
that makes sense if you have different libraries looking at other libraries' schedules, but if it's your own library, you usually know the days that you're closed regularly. It's the irregular things that I want reminders of. So that's something that I got to work on.
When I put this up on the homepage for everybody to see at their own library in December, that was when I had people telling me, "Oh yeah, we're not closed every Wednesday anymore," and I just forgot. I never told you. So, many of my library directors, the library director job is a part-time job, and so they don't remember things like, oh, we need to keep our calendar up to date in Koha. So, and if they don't go to the tools page and click on the calendar, they're not going to remember that they can even set that. So putting all the dates, I've got this set up so that it only shows the closures for the next 12 months. And so, but that's what they see, is everything in those next 12 months. So that way it just is there to remind them that, they need something they need to pay attention to. And and I gave them a full set of instructions on how to set the calendar, but if they don't want to do it themselves, I've also given them instructions that they can just send me a list of dates that they're closed, and I'm happy to add that for them. But mostly I put it there so that they remember that it's something they need to think about.
I put my code for the club hold there. It's really basic. There's probably better ways to do it. But basically it's just saying if you go to run the report and there's nothing there, then put in a message that says nothing there. Otherwise, put in the stuff from the report.
Thanks for sharing.
All right. I think we basically made it a whole hour, like if you round. So I think this is a good place to call it if you guys are good. Yep. All right. See you
See you
guys
later.
all next month.
See y'all.
Yeah.